I am so excited, everyone, to introduce a guest that I have for us today. I know for many of you, there's this huge term in the endo community, and that is endo belly. And it's this huge, just mysterious thing that drives all of us nuts. It's like, I ate something and now my belly looks like I'm 5 months pregnant, and I know I'm not. And it's embarrassing. You don't know what caused it. You don't know what's happening. It's frustrating. And I know many women across the internet have shared photos of their distended bellies. It's a maddening problem. So I thought that we should address that and try to give you guys as many hacks and as many tips as you can so that you can actually overcome this problem, because I know in my journey, I've overcome that. So we're going to talk to Dr. Shreya Soni, and she is a naturopathic physician, which actually I'm going to probably ask you, Dr. Soni, to give a quick description of what that is, because I love naturopathic physicians, but I know many people still are coming to the table learning about these other types of alternative care that they can receive for problems like pelvic pain and endometriosis. So I'm going to introduce you, and then tell me a little bit about naturopathic medicine and how you came into it, because I think it's a really fascinating field and I absolutely love it. So for me, real quick, for those of you who don't know me, I'd introduce myself. I'm April Summerford, and I'm a women's health and leadership coach. I'm a stage 4 endo survivor. I've moved past all of those problems, and now I'm on a mission to help other women do so. I'm really tired of hearing about this problem being a serious issue in society, and I want women to be able to move quickly through the healing process, unlike me, not take over a decade, and actually get over this problem quickly. So that's what I do. And Dr. Soni, she is actually a naturopathic physician, as I just mentioned. She has been working for quite some time now as a specialist in endometriosis and other complex issues like that.
I'll start to explain more about what I do.
Yeah.
So what is a naturopathic physician? I went to 4 years of medical school focusing on lifestyle natural treatments, as well as what the conventional medical system has to offer. So we have a broad spectrum, but we really do zoom right into some of the natural treatments, whether it's herbs or diet. And we go into the level of detail where we know how much impact each of those interventions would have if you were to put them in place. So, even something like fasting, we get really granular with how to do it and know what to expect for impact. Okay. So the way that works out in an appointment, for example, is that it's a very comprehensive way of care. We spend about an hour with you at your first appointment, get to know you head to toe, and then put together a picture where, one supplement, if it's a supplement, or one lifestyle intervention, if that's what we're going with, has the ability to impact several body systems at the same time. So for example, for some women who are having issues with getting their hormones on track, something like getting sunshine in the morning on your eyeballs can be a great intervention for making sure you're producing your hormones in the right way across the day. So those are the types of treatments to expect if you're going to see a naturopathic doctor. As well, in California, we do have a full scope where I can order whatever lab I would like to. And so we're likely to do heavy investigations for you. Optimizing nutrient intake is one of the things that I start with for a lot of people. And this time of year, vitamin D is incredibly important, especially with everything that's going on in our environment with infections. So that's what you can expect from a naturopathic perspective.
Okay. And just out of curiosity, because I have my audience's voice in the back of my head, can you prescribe drugs? Do you ever use drugs still, or are you completely all natural, or how do you use your interventions?
Yeah. So we do a lot of supplementation. So medications, it's a state-by-state basis on what we can prescribe. In California, as a naturopathic doctor, you can get a furnishing license that would be in conjunction with a medical doctor, and it allows you to prescribe certain basic medications as needed. But typically, we do like to collaborate with your other specialists, whether it's your gastroenterologist or your psychiatrist or endocrinologist, and have them manage those more granular aspects of your health, and we're your person to put it all together.
Got it. Okay, so you're an integrator of basically helping women go through their journey and understand which pieces they need to look at and what's working for them and what's not through these different interventions. Okay.
Yeah, but we do look at detailed lab work and detailed testing, and if you ever needed a medication, we'd make sure that you got that.
That's awesome. And from what my own personal experiences with different physicians is, you're really going for the root cause. So your philosophy of healing is that there's actually something going on that's triggering symptoms and these other resulting issues. So most medications usually will just temporarily turn those off for people, which is not a bad thing. It's just they're a temporary fix. But really your philosophy of healing, from what I understand, and you totally chime in and tell me, is that you like to go for the root and find out what's actually going wrong.
Yes, you said it beautifully. It is my belief that lifelong health and vitality is a birthright for everybody, and I'm here to get you back on that track.
That's awesome. I love it. All right, so tell us a little bit about what is endobelly? Like, what's going on here? It's like, it's bad enough that endometriosis seems very mysterious, but then there's also this weird thing going on where women have extended bellies and bloating. And what can we do to help them?
All right, well, let's just get started with these slides, chatting about endobelly. Okay, so I'm assuming everybody in our audience already knows what endometriosis is. It is an immune-related condition where the cells of your uterine lining have actually migrated to other parts of your body. So for some women, it's even their diaphragm. And when you're having your menstrual cycle, or when hormones are fluctuating just across the month, these cells that are in other parts of your body also start shedding blood or having hormone reactions. So it can be excruciatingly painful. So that's a brief summary of what endometriosis is.
Okay. And just for preface, just because there is still a lot of unfortunate misinformation out there, and we have a moment to correct it. What's up with the fact that people still think that it's completely hormone, and we now have evidence to the contrary, that there's a lot of other things and factors going on than just hormones? Yeah.
So my personal experience is that infections can be part of why your immune system is going out of whack in the first place. And so other causes there is a definite association with environmental toxins and your exposure. And based on the way we're living, that is just set to be rising. So unless you're going in and removing some of these endocrine disrupting things from your environment, conditions like endometriosis just stand to be getting worse for women.
Yeah. And we have, there's studies actually that it's getting worse, which is to a certain degree why I was sort of for a long time like, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to talk about endo anymore. I'm sick of it. And then I saw that the statistics are saying it's just getting worse. And that really bothers me. So I'm like, okay, I'll get involved and see what I can do to help women, really get to the root issues of these things. Because you really shouldn't live in debilitating pain for your whole life. That's just not what life's about.
No, and honestly, and so conventional therapies, they can be very effective, whether it's suppressing hormones or it's different surgeries. But until you've dealt with that cause of the endometriosis that's happening, your body is just going to grow back new lesions. So yes, you had the surgery and you removed the lesions, but you haven't dealt with the cause. And so there's a good chance lesions are going to come back and you're going to need another surgery.
Yeah. And from what I said, which we can talk about on a different time because it's a long, in-depth discussion, but from what I've seen, a good quality surgery is a huge part of the healing process. And when I say good quality, I mean wide excision with a specialist, not just a regular OB who is burning the tissue. That's not the proper treatment. However, what I've seen is that if you don't get to these root cause issues, inflammation is still really high in your body, which results in DNA breaks, hormone disruption, and the whole cycle continues. So it's not uncommon for women, like you're saying, to not know to get to the root issues because they've been told just take your drugs, do the surgery, and then it's a reoccurrent issue that they're constantly dealing with.
Mm-hmm. I prefer to get in there as early as possible. It makes the cleanup much easier from some.
That makes sense. Always good to get it before it's a serious issue, right? So, okay. So I think we've covered enough about what endo is, especially since we're talking about specifically endobelly. I know most of our community, that's what they want to hear about. So tell me a little bit about endobelly. What's going on with that?
Yeah, so we explained some of the mechanism behind endometriosis. Endobelly itself can have a number of causes. So for some women, it's happening around your cycle, and it's the hormonal reaction to these uterine cells that are in other locations in your belly that's causing this flare.
Okay.
For others, it's an immune reaction to something you've eaten that's causing this bloating. So it could be related to bacterial overgrowth, for example. For other women, it's improper digestion. So liver and gallbladder are very much involved in metabolism of hormones. And when the flow of bile to the liver and gallbladder are not optimized, it can also contribute to bloating. and even things like reflux.
Okay.
There's differences between acid reflux, for example, and bile reflux. I'm always happy to get into more detail about that.
Yeah,
And
let's start at the top and let's move back down into that, because I know there's a few girls in the community that were really talking about this recently and need some help with it. So on the immune side of things, how can we help people understand if like their endobelly is because of an immune reaction, or it's because they're on their period and the endo cells are shedding their lining? Like, how do they know? Is it based on the time of month, or what are some indicators we can give them to kind of assess what's really happening?
Yeah, immune reaction can sometimes occur if you've eaten something that, isn't great and you're already predisposed for immune reactions in your gut. So a common term for this is called leaky gut, when your lining is weak. And anyone with endometriosis is at higher risk for it, often because of being on high-dose pain medications, like, for example, aspirin, Advil. They can cause the lining of your gut to be weaker and allow you to have a much easier immune reaction.
Okay. And so it could be then a specific food group that they are, which the research and kind of how far I've gone onto this is, it's probably that some of us started with certain immune issues anyway, like to begin with. And then we had food triggers that we probably had since childhood and we didn't know about it. Like, I didn't know that I have a serious corn problem and I have a gluten problem. I didn't know that. And so my whole childhood, actually, my mom told me, you just were kind of a funny child. You always kind of complained about your stomach. Well, since I fixed these food issues, I've had no problems. So obviously I was having food issues, and intolerances since I was a kid.
Mm-hmm. There's definitely food sensitivities. And then there's also the concept of healing your gut lining so it's able to tolerate more. Some of the top food sensitivities that I just see living in the United States are sensitivities to, for example, dairy and gluten. It's very common that people need to remove these from their diet. They feel better from an immune perspective after removing these from their diet, and doing that helps strengthen their lining. Other people, you'll find that there are so many food sensitivities for them, and then the concept of leaky gut comes into play, where we also have to support their lining so that they're able to tolerate some of these foods and not have a reaction. And it is possible to support your intestinal lining. It's person to person what we end up picking, but some of the things that I end up considering are supplements like colostrum or glutamine, and as well as lifestyle interventions.
Okay, that makes sense. And so that's why there's a lot of like reset diets, but they're not necessarily something that you live on forever. They're just a reset to get your body a chance to heal and really build up the tolerance for some of these things. I know for me, like, I removed certain food groups and then I've tested a few times for different things. And I've found now pretty sure like what my hardcore immune, like I can't have these foods are like ever, versus the ones that were, the body tends to start like targeting everything because that lining's opening. And so then everything's targeted, like, I just can't tolerate any of it, like you're talking about. And so once I healed my lining, I started to be able to tolerate some of these foods again. And that was nice. And I always want to tell women that, like, this isn't forever. It's like, what do you mean I have to live on this diet of like, bone broth and veggies? And like, I got to have some fun, right? And so eventually you can tolerate some of these food groups once you've healed some of those responses.
Yeah. And so the gold standard for finding out your sensitivities is, like you mentioned, a diet. And we call it the elimination diet, where you're eating foods that we know are, more gentle and less likely to be reactive. So for example, keeping out foods that are nightshades, if anyone's heard of that term, for a period of time. And then you take a careful reintroduction phase, which is very important, and see what gives you stomach pain or what causes bloating when you reintroduce it. So that's the gold standard. But in addition to that, if implementing a strict diet like that is a challenge, and it was for me back in the day when I tried, you have access to some of these food sensitivity tests. Now, they're not as good as the elimination diet, but they do give you a good starting place, and they present their results as, things that are in the red, things that you should just avoid, things that are yellow. So foods that you have a moderate reaction to, and doing this period of healing, improving your intestinal lining, you stand to be looking at, after 3 months, there's a good chance that you could eat those moderate foods and not react to it because you've healed your gut. You've taken out the foods that are causing inflammation for a chunk of time, and your gut lining's had a chance to heal.
I've learned a lot about myself doing those types of tests, because I did a lot of the elimination diets, and I'm actually one of those hardcore people where I really followed it. And even then I was still having symptoms, and it was like, I'm pretty sure that there's something I'm eating still that's not okay with my body, but I can't quite like decipher what it is. And so when I took the test out, sure enough, there were a few foods that were just part of my diet, like every day, that were red. It was like, nope, you cannot have this. I'm like, okay. So once I removed those, a lot of my symptoms, it seemed to completely resolve just on that alone, which is pretty amazing. So anyway, I love the immune system is fascinating.
Yeah, we could get into this in detail because I love it too. And sometimes some of these food sensitivity blood tests, they will show things that you eat on a daily basis. They will actually be things you're sensitive to because you've been exposed to it so long. And so all that is that you need to create a variety in your diet
and rotate it out, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I think that's we have a whole nother discussion on that too, but that's another, I think, problem with this. And in general, people who have gut issues is that you start doing these elimination diets and then you start getting kind of fearful about venturing out, or like that you're ready to try some new foods again. And so then you start, like when I know what I did, I just start cycling through the same things. And then sure enough, years later, I had a test that came back and said, well, pretty much you're allergic to everything you're eating because you just haven't cycled through and given your body other foods. And I know why I did it. It was because I was afraid, because I had been so sick before. I was like, I don't really want to try anything but these foods because they seem to be okay. And then my body basically developed an intolerance to them because I just wasn't cycling them in and out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. And
okay.
So while we're on immune, we had chatted a bit before, and you mentioned a strategy that you found very helpful. If the endobelly, for example, is because of a recent gastrointestinal exposure, if it's for example, you ate something of poor quality and it might have exposed you to a bacteria or virus that's causing this reaction. You mentioned that activated charcoal was very helpful for you in helping to clear it out.
Everyone who knows me knows I'm a prop person, so I bring my props. So.
Yeah, that's definitely a great strategy, especially if someone's having diarrhea. This will turn your stool to look a little bit black.
Yeah,
so keep that in mind. It's also not a long-term intervention because it binds up toxins in general, and it clears it out. If you were to do it on a daily basis, you wouldn't be absorbing as much nutrition because you'd be binding so many things up and getting rid of it.
Yeah, and I will say too, it can be very constipating. So I tell people, like, drink lots of water with it and flush all the toxins out when you're doing it. It is a good little detox regimen occasionally too. I don't do it as much as anymore though, because I don't need to as much, but it is still on hand if I eat something and I can tell pretty much immediately I'm getting bloating symptoms that either I ate something that is bad, like it has some sort of infectious something going on, or it was made with poor quality. It can also happen if I don't eat gluten at all, but if someone sneaks cross-contamination gluten in there sometimes, that'll be a problem. And I'll just take the activated charcoal and it binds it right up and stops any bloating from happening.
That's excellent. And one of the things I tell someone who is having a bit of a food reaction, what you should do at that time is just keep your diet very bland and very simple. So focus on those liquids like a bone broth, for example, or warm water with lemon juice. And the idea is that you are fasting a little to starve out these bacteria and viruses. So you're giving your gut a break for about 2 days. And even after that, you're sticking to more warm, well-cooked foods to just be gentle on your digestion.
Yeah. And talk a little bit more about digestion, because that's a huge impact in the community. I've noticed too, is just not even understanding the things we should do to really support our digestion and how we kind of know about this. I talk to, once again, it's something that happens when you're sick. You kind of go extreme, right? You're like willing to do whatever it takes to get better. And so I have a mom in our forum and her daughter's just eating salad every afternoon, and it's raw salad. And as soon as she told me that, I was like, I don't know if that's the best thing for you right now if you're having extreme health problems.
For patients is that salads are not good for everyone. It's not, you're not necessarily doing something good for your body if you're having a salad every day. And this is something I learned from Chinese medicine. There's a seasonality to foods. So for example, in the winter, your body, it wants to eat more nourishing, warmed, well-cooked foods. And then if you're someone who eats salads, summer is the best time for that. And the reason is, like, if you're eating a salad, your body has to do extra work to break it down. It has to essentially cook it on the inside versus pressure cooking a food, having a soup or stew, and it's already been cooked and it's easy to break down and digest. So you do want to take that load off your body. If it's already stressed, you want to be eating warm, well-cooked food.
Okay. And that's great for you to say that, because that's what I thought when she said that. I'm like, oh, I don't know if that's the best thing, because I've noticed that extra digestion load when it is raw is really, really hard if your gut isn't healthy.
Exactly. There are some other tips, like if you are going to end up having a salad, that matter more. And so what I had mentioned was how you eat matters as much as what you eat. So some things to keep in mind, especially if you're eating a salad, is mindful eating.
Mm.
So having a ritual around the time that you eat and guarding it very strongly. So if you're sitting there eating and someone, talks to you or asks you to do something, protect your boundaries. This is your time to rest and digest. It is the parasympathetic nervous system that does digestion and both relaxation. So it's really important to be in a relaxed state. It's important to focus on your food while you're eating it. So as soon as it arrives, you should start thinking about the smell, the taste, the texture. Just that process is going to start to release enzymes in your mouth versus having, to take enzymes as a supplement. And when you finally get it into your mouth, like thinking about where your food came from, feeling those sensations of gratitude, all of that is going to lead to secretion of the enzymes that you need to properly break down and digest the food. Please do not watch TV while eating. Treat your food like it's the most amazing thing, beautiful thing you've ever seen. That's your meditation process. Just eating is your meditation process. If you're having something like a chicken, chew at least 15 times, even 30 times if you're someone with gastrointestinal problems. Chew it properly, and once you're done eating, even sit there for a minute, let things digest, stay in that parasympathetic state.
Mm-hmm. And any tips for, so many of us live really stressful lives anyway, any tips for switching on to that phase? Like you were saying, so thinking about your food, preparing the food, smelling the food, I read is really helpful. So I've been trying to smell my food more before I eat it. Anything else that you've tried or that works as far as getting people to switch over to, from that I'm stressed, I'm just going to eat, type of thing, to, okay, now I'm turning on the mechanism to really start eating?
Yeah. So stress management does play a big role in it. If you need additional support to this mindful eating, the first step is healthy boundaries. And the second step is there are these interventions that you can try to help your digestive system. So a very popular common thing is apple cider vinegar. The way you consume it does matter. So the most common way that I ask people to take it is a couple tablespoons of it in a few ounces of water, and you take it back as a shot. This prevents it from affecting your teeth.
Okay.
And taking it that way has your body secrete its own enzymes. It encourages your body to secrete enzymes that help you break down and digest the food. Yeah, so that's one of the top strategies. And I can get into some of these others, but did you want to add anything?
Yeah. Well, I think just with digestive enzymes, I have taken digestive enzymes, orally. But I have been learning too that if I really do the appreciation part, which is free, and I really, thankful for my food and I prepare it, that I do get my own digestive enzymes. And I've tried it several times now. I don't eat the enzymes and I don't have any problems. Great. So I do think that more than we know this mental mindset, which we know the sympathetic, or I don't know how many people have nerded out on that. I'm a nerd, so I love studies about parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system and fight or flight with your brain. But it's really connected to your digestive system. And it makes sense. It's like if you were running from a tiger, it's not like, oh, it's time to eat. It's like it's time to run. So I think in America, we live in a very stressed place most of the time, and we're really not in that restful place where our body's willing to receive nutrients. And we have to learn how to switch on those mechanisms.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And honestly, chronic stress over time, it's going to reduce your immune system and your immune response. So anything you can add to your day to bring you into the present moment. So by that, I mean studying your food like it's the most beautiful thing ever. It's going to be helpful for your digestion.
I love that. And then tell me a little bit about apple cider vinegar. So I'm a big fan. That's one of my other props that I brought because I love my apple cider vinegar. And I use it for another supplement that women are usually given is betaine HCI, or something that would raise their stomach acid. But another affordable way is just to use apple cider vinegar a little bit, like 15 minutes before you start eating, which would also start that mental process of like, okay, I'm preparing to eat. I'm going to take my apple cider vinegar, so that their stomach acid levels are high enough to actually start breaking down the food. Because what I've read is that if it sits too long in the stomach without being broken down, that's also causing extreme distress, correct?
Yeah, and we need your stomach to be very acidic. We need it at a pH of about 2 in order to break down the protein properly, in order to nuke out any bacteria and viruses so that they can't, go in and cause other reactions and symptoms. So apple cider vinegar is a great strategy. Taking betaine HCl is another strategy. Something to be mindful of is there are a few patients for whom it does increase your hydrochloric acid in the stomach, the HCl,
Okay.
and they can feel a little bit more reflux.
Okay.
So for them, there are other things to consider, like tightening up that sphincter so it's tighter.
Okay. So, and how would they know, just basically by symptoms, if they're taking
If they get worse with that apple cider vinegar, then they need a little more investigation. And there are supplements that help tighten up that sphincter too. There's things like melatonin and limonene, and dosing's going to be based on the person.
Okay. Well, I didn't know melatonin helps with the sphincter muscles too. I know all about its pain reducing properties with endo and helping obviously with the restorative sleep, but we'll have to talk about that at some point. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's one of your sleep hormones, antioxidant, antiviral, and then it also will tighten up the sphincter, and it's been studied with a specific dose to do that.
It's just magic, that melatonin, huh? I love it.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
The best thing is you can produce it yourself. You can secrete it yourself.
I know, especially, and that's a different talk too, especially if your genes are clean enough and your serotonin levels are good and then it's converting properly. I think whenever I've had melatonin problems, it's again stress related. I have things being robbed and my melatonin levels are not where they need to be, and that's causing other issues. So stress is just not good for us. Just all around.
Yeah. And the other aspect of digestion that I really wanted to highlight that I don't see enough people consider is the role of the liver and gallbladder. Okay. And how they can be implicated when it comes to bloating and when it comes to hormones. The liver is responsible for metabolizing all of your hormones, and your gallbladder helps with breaking down the fats. So when you're eating something, especially a fatty meal, there's bile that's secreted. And then if you have hormone issues, studies have shown that it does impact the flow of bile through your gallbladder. So for example, if someone's been on birth control for a while, it does affect biliary sludge or your risk for gallstones, for example. So those are all considerations, and it is possible to support the flow of bile. And there's a simple food that does it, and it's sunflower lecithin. Oh. So that's there as a liquid, it's there as a capsule, it's there as a powder, but it's something that will liquefy that bile, and it'll help you break down some of those fatty foods and potentially cause less bloating if that is the cause of why you're bloated. Okay, that makes sense. And I think too, with the keto movement and everything, and everybody went high fat, I was really worried about women who have gallbladder issues. So like, that's like the worst thing once again, everything makes sense if it's working properly, but if you're trying to get up your intake of fat, but your body's not actually metabolizing it and it's getting, like you're saying, a bile problem, then that's going to cause you a lot of issues versus actually your body using that fat for fuel. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Right. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. All right. What else do we got that's helpful that we can give them? Let's see. Yes, we could talk about how across the month your hormones are fluctuating up and down, and that also plays a role in what to eat and what not to eat. So this is a nice graphic that shows you across 28 days what's happening with just a few key hormones, estrogen and progesterone here being the main ones. And so the first half here, day 0 to day 14, it's called your follicular phase. And you can see estrogen is peaking during this time. And so you technically, you're feeling more energetic up to the day that you ovulate. For most women, it's day 14. And you can have some of the lighter foods at this time. So if you are going to have a salad, it might be okay from day 1 to 14. But day 14 onwards, you enter into the luteal phase. And so this is more of the rest and nourishing phase of your cycle. And during this time, things like well-cooked root vegetables, soups and stews, and even lifestyle strategies like more yin yoga, nothing too stimulating, is important to help your body get to where it needs to in order to have a healthy menstrual cycle. Okay, this is something I started noticing years ago that nobody was really talking about, which is like, okay, I'm a woman and I'm on a 28-day or 30-day cycle, depending, maybe longer or shorter, depending on who you are. And there's times of the month when I'm eating certain food groups and my body is not okay with it. And it took me a lot of annoying tracking to kind of understand, like, well, okay, I seem to be able to eat more raw foods during the follicular phase, what you just said. And then I tend to be able to eat a little bit more starchy, type vegetables in the progesterone, follicular versus the luteal phase. And that was like really weird to me that nobody really talks about that. It's like they talk about,
well, bloating, this and that, but they weren't really talking about that you can tolerate certain foods better during certain times in your cycle because of the hormone state you're in.
Yeah, hormones are totally different depending on where you are in the month. And so for any woman who's not doing it already, tracking your cycle is a really good starting place to start to give you that key as to why you're feeling the way you are, or what might be best for you to focus on from a lifestyle perspective, even when to schedule an interview, for example, so that you're doing it when your hormones are at their best, you're at your most social and energetic.
Yeah, I noticed my skin is better. I feel the world is a much better place. I always thought that I was weird, and then I realized I'm just a woman. It's like I'm about to ovulate, so the world is just this abundant, amazing place, right? And then when I get closer to my period, I'm kind of like, I don't want to talk to anybody. I'm a hermit, don't want to go outside. And that just seems to be very normal from what I'm reading now.
Yeah, same. It's definitely a more introspective time when you're closer to when you're going to start to menstruate. Your body is getting ready to shed all that uterine lining. And another huge immune reaction is about to happen. It's about to send out a lot of cytokines. Some women can get more diarrhea going up to their period because of that.
Okay.
But your body is getting ready for a huge immune response before your period.
Okay. Is that another reason why women can have severe digestive? I know a few girls in the forum were talking about severe digestive upset right before their period, and then obviously during their period, along with all the extreme cramping and pain. But they seem to be related but non-related, kind of, if that makes sense. So it's like you kind of have your uterus cramping, you have that pain, but then you also have gastrointestinal pain depending on what's going on, it sounds like.
Yes. And again, another cause of that gastrointestinal pain to keep in mind is the liver and gallbladder, because they're helping you metabolize those new and extra hormones that are happening. So for example, women who get that diarrhea before their period, it's typically looser, more floating stools. And that's an indication that the gallbladder is implicated, because the gallbladder breaks down fats. And so if you're having stools that are floating, it's showing that your body is not breaking down and absorbing fats.
Okay. What should they do if that's happening? What can they do about that, or how do they talk to their doctor about that?
Yeah, so it's definitely something important to investigate, especially if you have yellow stools or gray stools. Gray stools can be an emergency.
Oh.
So please talk to your doctor about it. Don't listen to me even or Google anything.
Yeah.
If you have a gallstone, that's a medical emergency, and you go to the ER, and that's characterized by nausea, pain, and cramping.
Okay. And I know, just speaking again from a lot of the stories I hear, how do they talk about their pain so that they know this is an emergency and not just, oh, she's a woman with period pain, which is a whole other discussion we should have about that shouldn't be happening, but it's still happening. So how do they talk about it? So they really emphasize the nausea. What else do they emphasize to let them know?
Things to emphasize are how high your pain is. So, on a scale of 1 to 10, maybe it's a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10. That's really going to alert your doctors. And then talking about the quality of the pain, so sharp, shooting, stabbing, all of those are going to indicate something that's more urgent and emergent. Okay. Another thing that is an emergent and urgent condition around your period that I've seen some women deal with is ovarian torsion or ovarian cysts. And that's another incident where you need to go to the emergency room and have them assess you and potentially even correct that cyst, so that your ability to stay fertile is preserved. Because what happens in that case is your fallopian tube is twisted.
Okay.
That's another possibility going right up into your period.
That could happen. And then what if, just on the converse, what if women are having a severe constipation? So obviously there's the woman who's having severe diarrhea, kind of what's going on there. What if she's having severe constipation going up to her period?
Going up to period. So constipation is one of those things that is, easier to handle. So the basics are watch your water intake. You don't want to overhydrate by any means, but 8 cups a day is typically a good mark. In addition to that, eating more fibrous foods. So your green leafy vegetables are going to help you have bowel movement. The other thing that's helpful across the board, not just for constipation, but also for hormone metabolism, for healthy genes, is magnesium. So magnesium, it's also helpful for uterine cramping, relaxing that, reducing your pain. Magnesium is an important consideration if you're constipated before your period.
Okay. And the girls in the forum know that I'm a magnesium, I'm a serious proponent. I live by my magnesium, and I do always, probably double down on my dosage right before I start. And if I do that and I stay hydrated, I don't have pain now, which is amazing, because when I was younger, that wasn't even possible. So it's totally possible.
So your body, if you're feeling those cramps, it's giving you a clue that there is something to investigate, something to look into in more detail. Magnesium is one of those nutrients that our soil these days is quite deficient in. So if you're not supplementing it, it's likely that you're low. A lot of people ignore symptoms like muscle cramps or muscle tension, but really it could be a magnesium deficiency. Even something like high blood pressure could be related to lack of magnesium.
Wow, even more reason why I'm a huge magnesium fan. That's awesome. Yeah, and we'll have to talk about that. Maybe that'll be one of our next talks, as we'll chat about sort of understanding the signs that your period are giving you, because I've been reading a lot about the fact that this is our 5th vital sign. And so if we as women have a cool extra 5th vital sign, then we should probably know how to interpret it. Like you're saying, in the event that something's actually a serious emergency, what is the body telling you? You know, my biggest challenge in the past has been, I feel like I'm getting a signal and I don't know what it means. So if we could help women understand what those signals could mean, they can be their own health detectives and start, moving forward on their healing.
I love to remind women that they live longer than men. And the reason I think part of it is you have this menstrual cycle, and it's going to give you a clue about what's going on underneath and what you need to be addressing. Men don't have that opportunity. When your menstrual cycle is occurring, your defenses are down. So if there's viruses or infections at play, we're going to see those signs more. Some women feel flu-like symptoms during their period, and that does give me a clue that, hey, we need to look at chronic underlying infections and help your immune system at this time. Whereas for a man, you wouldn't have that clue at all. So
that makes sense. And I've heard that a lot about flu-like symptoms during the period. So that alone is probably a revolutionary thing that many women are like raising their hand. Hey, I get that right now. So they could have underlying infections that are causing
viral infections.
Okay.
And again, with infections, it's about your terrain. It's about creating an environment that these infections can play a role. So in addition to treating the infections, we're helping your body build a system where you're less at risk for infections.
Which we know right now during this time, that's the best time to do this. That's what I keep telling the girls. I'm like, there's just no better time to do this. You're at home, you're quarantined, you needed to probably address these issues anyway, because like we're saying, your body's been telling you, and now you have an extra viral threat out there, and it's just no better time for us to get our cellular defenses up and get our immune system healthy.
Yeah, and so I'll just head out to my information then, because that transitions into, during this time, we are seeing patients both through telemedicine and in person. And the benefit of telemedicine is you can stay in your home, and certain hormone test kits. So I can find out about your sex hormones. I can do food sensitivities all with you, even check vitamin D levels, all with you staying at home. So vitamin D can be done over blood spot. Food sensitivities can be done over blood spot. Hormones can be done over blood spot or urine. I typically prefer the urine test.
Okay.
But this is a great time to optimize your health. But in addition, I am also available to see patients in person in San Jose.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Soni. This is so amazing. I'm so glad to have met you. I'm thrilled that you're focusing on endometriosis and pelvic pain and some of these harder to diagnose and treat conditions, because we need more people like you doing this. And I'm so excited that you're actually able to be open during the quarantine, so that if women want to start investigating these things and really getting to these root issues and fixing them, that you're available to help them through that process.
Yes. And honestly, like, my favorite is focusing on endometriosis, especially because these are the women that I see be such huge change makers after having survived that type of debilitating pain, made the lifestyle diet changes, as well as survived multiple surgeries. There's no one more informed or more powerful out there in the world. So that is my favorite population to work with.
That's awesome, because I really do believe the same thing. I think us endo women are pretty stinking awesome. I always tell them, I was like, man, if you're an endo survivor, you're badass. So I think it's awesome that you're serving women with endo and pelvic pain. And I just can't wait to talk to you again. Thank you so much for your time and for all of your insights and wisdom. And we are going to definitely do this again, and we'll see what they have for questions. So I know you had a slide about questions, so they'll reach out to us. Where are you? How can they find you on social media and other platforms as well?
Yeah, so that is my Instagram handle. It's the Endo Doc. And then my website, dr-soni.com, has a lot of information on how to get in touch with me. Okay. I practice at a clinic called Naturopathic Family Health. So I'm with a team of other care providers, and they're really wonderful at scheduling. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. All right. Well, everybody get on Instagram and follow Dr. Soni right now. And if you are in my group, great. If you're not in my group, get on Facebook, join my group of Beyond Endo Warriors. You just go into Facebook and put Beyond Endo. I'll put the link below as well, so you can go ahead and join us. And we are basically just practicing self-care, exploration, education during the pandemic so that we can all be healthier at the end of this instead of in a worse physical state. So anyway, join us. We're on a mission to help women just like you, and we are women just like you. So we will see you soon.